If you're anything like me, you have stared at your precious pile of Axis and Allies IPC bucks wondering what they are worth in real life, and if 3 IPCs is really the value of that one soldier. I figured it out, and it's definitely not what you expect. Let the games begin. This started out as a simple enough question: what is the exact value of one IPC in real life? But there is another question to answer here as well. Is each plastic unit priced correctly based on real life costs and unit representation? To get things started, I concluded that the easiest way to do this is to find a single unit in Axis and Allies to base my calculations off of, and then work backwards from there. But even before that, I have to pick a version of Axis and Allies to pull this specific unit from. So, after much deliberation and soul searching, I decided on Axis and Allies 1940 Europe/Pacific 2nd edition. Cause let's be serious. And it turns out that the perfect plastic figurine to establish unit value is the US battleship. According to the rulebook, every battleship the US player purchases is an Iowa-class battleship. Yes, I calculated values based on US units for the remainder of this video because the build price tags are the easiest to find. Starting with the first round of ANA 1940 SE, there is one battleship present in C-Zone 10 on the board, off the coast of California. However, there are no active Iowa-class battleships until the 22nd of February 1943, so to simplify things, we conclude that one plastic battleship on the board represents one Iowa-class battleship in real life. Now we have to figure out how much an Iowa battleship was worth in 1940 when it was ordered. I found several sites claiming that the best guess for the price tag of an Iowa-class battleship was $100 million. But that is not all. You need to crew the frigate, and the number of crew needed to man this schooner is 1,921. I will go into greater detail later on about how much it costs to train conscripts, but for now, I will use a multiplier of 3 to cover the cost of training one fresh recruit to be a usable seaman on a battleship. This puts a total training cost of about 5.5 mil in 1940s money. Adjusting for inflation, the battleship's total price tag in 2020 dollars is over $1.52 billion per ship. No, I did not include the essentials to run the ship like fuel, food, and ammunition. So to keep things simple, we will round 1.52 billion up to 1.6 billion. That is almost the same price that hardcore ANA players put on their hand-painted miniatures. I'm looking at you, Larry. Now that we know how much a battleship is worth in today's money, we can divide the IPC cost of the in-game battleship, 20 IPCs, into 1.6 billion. The in real life modern day dollar value of one in-game IPC is $80 million. Each IPC is worth 80 million of what I get paid on an hourly basis to put up with my own kids. When is this quarantine going to freaking end? Now that we know the dollar value of one IPC, we can figure out if a plastic figurine of an infantry is really worth $240 million. But in order to do that, we would have to figure out how many men one plastic infantry from the game is supposed to represent in real life. Okay, so unsurprisingly, the hardest thing to get a modern dollar value on is the conscripted soldier. Luckily, I found an NBC News report highlighting the exact cost of a Marine in the US military as of 2002. I deducted the tech gear from their total price and got $54,000 per Marine directly out of training. Now, I get that a trained Marine is way more expensive than a conscripted soldier. So I did some figuring and concluded that the cost would be about a quarter of that to pump out a green private. So we are looking at about 13,500 present day dollars per conscript directly out of training, putting the cost per conscript in 1945 at around 950 bucks. Which is about the same cost as a Ford Deluxe four-door at the time. Using the value of the battleship that we already figured out, you could train 117,130 privates for the same price as one Iowa tree-tossing canoe. That is 2 corps, or about 2/3 of the entire D-Day invasion force. The next unit on our list is the Sherman tank. Finding the exact build price of this one was pretty easy. In 1945, the cost of a shiny new Sherman was about $44,000. That totals totals around 630,000 in today's money. However, you have to crew it. The Sherman had a crew of 5 men. Now we have already calculated a 1940s cost of $950 per conscript, but a tank crew needs more training than infantry. I would estimate on the low end at least double the training, leaving us with 1,900 old-timey dollars to train the crew. Converted to modern currency, you are looking at a total Sherman cost of around $770,000. You can get 2,081 Shermans for the price of 1 battleship. That is 8 divisions, or about 2/3 the size of the entire German tank army at the Battle of Kursk. Tracking onto our next unit, the fighter. ANA 1940 SE states that the US fighters are the P-38, and thus the purchase price in 1945 was $97,000 and only has 1 crew. I did a rough guess that the cost of training a US fighter pilot would be about 10 times the cost of an infantry, adding $9,500 to the bottom line, totaling 1.5 mil in modern money, getting you 11 wings, or about 1,044 fighters, per the same price as 1 Iowa boogie board, which is about half the number of downed British aircraft in the Battle for Britain. Barrel rolling onto our final in-game unit, the strategic bomber. ANA 1940 SE says the US player is building flying fortresses that had a sticker price of $188,000. The craft had a crew of 10, so the total training cost would be around $95,000 in 1940s bills. That leaves us with a cool 4 mil in modern cheddar to get your carpet bombing on. You could get a whopping 394 bombers for every Iowa class you trade in at your local dealership, landing you 5 wings, or the same number of Japanese aircraft that attacked Pearl Harbor in bombers. These numbers are impressive, but we have not even gotten to the jaw-dropping I ran out of spare factories heart attack-inducing coma that is the big reveal. 1 plastic soldier equals 18,000 men, totaling 240 million in today's money. 1 plastic tank equals 623 Sherman tanks, totaling 480 million in today's money. 1 plastic fighter equals 522 P-38 fighters, totaling 800 million in today's money. 1 plastic bomber is equal to 236 B-17 bombers, totaling 960 million in today's money. The real question now is, are these figurine representations accurate? In order to determine that, we will have to compare the starting figurine placements on the game board versus what we know about troop numbers during World War II. After the Dunkirk evacuation, there were 123,000 French soldiers across the Channel in the United Kingdom. In the beginning setup of the game, there are 2 French soldiers on the United Kingdom territory, so that means each plastic infantry unit represents 62,000 infantry in real life. That is about 2 corps or 1 army delegation worth of units per plastic figurine, totaling 840 million in modern currency. At the start of the war, Germany pushed 2,500 tanks through Belgium into France. Looking at the beginning setup of the game, Belgium has 3 plastic tank figurines. This would suggest that each plastic tank is worth about 840 real-life tanks, or roughly 3 divisions, totaling 646 million in modern currency. During the Battle of Britain in 1940, the UK had 1,963 aircraft. At the start of the game, the territory United Kingdom has 2 plastic fighters, making this one a clean 1,000 aircraft per plastic figurine, totaling 1.53 billion in modern currency. In the spring of 1940, the US were testing and flying B-17 bombers. They did have some early models of the B-17 in service around the start of the game, so an educated guess as to how many B-17 bombers are represented by 1 US strategic bomber located in central USA on the board is about 200, totaling 812 million in modern currency. Now we know that each IPC is worth 80 million, so figuring out how much each plastic figurine in the game should actually cost is pretty easy from here. Be sure to have your Burger King coupons ready, because these prices are gonna hit hard. An infantry unit should cost 10 IPCs. A single plastic tank should cost 8 IPCs. A fighter, 19 IPCs. Bombers should cost 10 IPCs. And finally, the control comparison we have been using this entire video, the battleship should cost 20 IPCs. But hey, you just got checked, reality checked, and scene. I'm only now imagining out how I'm going to spend all of my newly found IPC money. Pinxy, what's your hourly rate again? No, it's not like that. No, I have a coupon.